Okay, so you're probably wondering which is better to diversify in stocks or crypto. I wonder. Let me create a poll real quick. At the moment, I am waiting for my pops and my brother to get into town. While I'm waiting, which I have zero clue where they're at, they're being slow as shit. Yeah, my dad might be being a bit slow, but that's all right. While I'm waiting, though, I figure I could talk about the finer things in life. Should you diversify in stocks or crypto? You can only choose one. I'm going to choose stocks, obviously, because crypto is speculation, it's gambling, and there's no intrinsic value on any of them. I don't care what you say. I had to wash my face. The sweet kitties. I was hanging out with some cats. My kitties. And Squeakers and Misty, I love them, but they got some dander sometimes. So I get a little dander in my eyes, and I have to wash my face. It's because I rub my eyes like an idiot. But let's start a poll real quick. Let's see. I should diversify into crypto stocks. Okay, so the question here is, I should diversify into what? Crypto or stocks? Should I own the entire crypto market? I only have one choice in this hypothetical. Should I own the entire crypto market or should I own the entire stock market, including international stocks? Obviously, the latter. We're going to go with stocks because they're real businesses, and we're going to go over a listed triad of why this matters. All right. The safer and more rational choice is stocks. And here's why. So with stocks, you have an ownership in a real business, right? When you buy stocks or even ETFs, you're buying companies with assets, cash flow, employees, and actual products or services. That matters. There's something real there. It produces a product or a service or both, right? And there's other things that it may do. There's also historical returns. Global equities have historically returned 7 to 10% annually over long periods. Now, there's a lot of diversification options instead of just the U.S. stock market. For example, you can own U.S. stocks, you can own international stocks. There's dividend-paying stocks, growth companies, etc. There's a variety out there. And also, I think it's good to diversify because let's say the U.S. let's say the next 10 years in the U.S. somehow is bad for business and growth is stagnant, right? Well, having a bunch of international companies, especially in emerging markets, can be a real advantage. So we got one vote saying I should diversify into crypto stocks. Jay says hello. Hi, Jay. How you doing, brother? It's good to see you on the live stream. We're not going to be live for super long. We're just going to go over a couple things. I'll try to answer a few questions. At the moment, I'm waiting for my pops and my brother to get into town. They're being pretty slow. I hope they're doing all right. Don't know if they're going to be in town, but we'll see. They should be. They said they were going to be, but we'll see. So like there's also historical returns, like global equities of like I said, 7 to 10% annually over long periods. There's diversification options, which is huge. You can own U.S. stocks. I went over that. I'm all over the place today. But there's like regulation. There's regulation and transparency though. So like companies are audited, right? They are required to disclose their financials and governed by laws that protect the investors. Also, another big thing is that you can measure the value of a company by looking at its financials, by looking at what it does. There's several ways you can measure the actual value of a company without having to look at its market value. You can't do that with crypto. Crypto's intrinsic value by all measure is zero. Doesn't matter which one, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Ethereum. It all, at the end of the day, has an intrinsic value of zero. And what is the saying on this show? Anything with an intrinsic value of zero eventually goes to zero. Perceptual value is not enough. Intrinsic value is a real concept that matters. Nobody would pay for shit unless shit became popular, right? So I don't know. Crypto. So with crypto, it's a speculative asset. Most of the coins, even Bitcoin, don't generate cash flows or have intrinsic value. Price is almost entirely based on sentiment and speculation. That's big. There's also volatility. Bitcoin has had multiple 70 to 90% drawdowns. The majority of altcoins go to zero over time anyway. So it doesn't really matter. And eventually even Bitcoin goes to zero. It's only a matter of time. It just depends on when people finally get their head out of their rear end. You know what I mean? And then, let's see. We're already 5 minutes in, but we're making some progress here. So there's volatility, like I said. And then there's regulatory uncertainty. Governments worldwide are still figuring out how to regulate crypto. That risk hasn't gone away. It could be banned in several countries. It could be allowed. It just depends. Hopefully most governments get their head out of their rear end and realize that cryptocurrencies are nothing more than a gambling ploy and should be treated like gambling. There is Ponzi-like behavior. Now, new money needs to come in to keep the prices afloat. When hype dies, liquidity vanishes. So what happens when people decide that Bitcoin's too expensive to buy? That does happen, by the way. And when it does happen, a flood of sell-offs end up happening. And that's huge to admit as well. So keep that in mind. So if you're way bullish on Bitcoin, my Clickcoin, think again. You may be on the wrong track. What else are we going to talk about here? Bottom line is, look, if you want long-term growth, stocks win every time. You can measure the natural value of the stock itself without having to look at its market value. You can look at the market value afterwards just to see what it's worth, but you can actually measure its real value without having to look at how the market determines it, right? To figure out if it's just speculation. So crypto can have short-term lottery-like upside, but it's closer to gambling than investing. So that's something big. That's a big-time thing. Let's see. If you're truly limited to one choice, put your money into stocks, preferably broad. Sorry, I can't even speak. Preferably broad market ETFs for diversification. So anyway, what you need is a practical portfolio. Now, look, if you want to be into stocks, if you want to be into crypto, funny thing is on my Robinhood account, just as a joke, I put $1 into every single tradable crypto that they have on there, just as a joke. I bought a little extra Bitcoin because I bet against Bitcoin very heavily. So I was like, well, to hedge the bets a little bit further, might as well have a little bit more Bitcoin ownership. But overall, most of my cashback rewards end up going into Bitcoin, which is hilarious, by the way. It's funny stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, and it should be treated as such. It's a little bit of a risk to bet against it, but at the same time, I mean, anything with an intrinsic value of zero eventually goes to zero. It's just a matter of time, right? So, we're really hoping to see the day when it all goes down to zero. It's really the key. Do you guys think that crypto, my grifto, should go to zero? I think so. I think it'd be smart. I realized I forgot to put advertisements on here. Hold on. Let's save. But yeah, overall, I mean, like, we compare, if you're going to be diversified in anything, I think obviously stocks would be the way to go. The fact that the SEC, by the way, the SEC is corrupt because they have allowed crypto to flourish as much as it's flourished. And it feels like a bit of a sin, if we're going to be honest. It feels like a big sin to me. Let's Oh, let's see. My eye is red right now. Jeez. Give me a few moments, folks. I'm checking a couple things. But yeah, I mean, it's really just, it requires all this new dumb money to come in, right? To fund the old money that got in early. It really is greater fool theory on digital steroids. I think it's something that can't be ignored. And I think that people who are in denial about Bitcoin and all of crypto need to get, like I said, get their head out of the sand. And the problem is a lot of these people are going into echo chambers like Reddit subreddits, and just putting their head in the sand is really the thing. But yeah, obviously here we're big Michael Saylor fans. We're huge Michael Saylor fans, if anything. We all know that Michael Saylor is the truth. He is our homie. No. So if we were to do like a Michael Saylor versus a Warren Buffett sort of scenario, we would conclude that obviously Warren Buffett is the superior investor. In that, think about it this way. Let's say Warren Buffett has done everything that Michael Saylor decided to do, right? So, Michael Saylor basically uses his company as a Bitcoin holding company at this point, where they just issues new shares, takes the money from the issuance, and starts loading up on Bitcoin, right? Could you imagine, this just shows you the difference between the two types of shareholders between Berkshire Hathaway and Micro Penis Strategies, all right? So on one hand, Micro Penis Strategies shareholder is so degenerate that they think it's okay for him to issue stocks, to issue shares, take that money and buy a bunch of crypto and load up on it on the company's dime, right? That's crazy. Now, imagine Warren Buffett did that. How much of an uproar from the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway would there be? It shows you the quality of shareholder, right? The quality of shareholder says, no, we want real businesses. We want real cash flows. Crypto is gambling and it's greater fool theory on steroids. So when Michael Saylor is getting into Bitcoin, he is literally getting into a gambling market. He is taking a huge risk on his company's reputation and Michael Saylor's reputation already sucks, so it doesn't matter. But the thing is, I still can't believe one person voted on crypto in this poll. This is insane. But look, Michael Saylor knows what he's doing. Actually, he doesn't. Michael Saylor is a fraud. I'm sorry, he's a fraud. And I like the guy. He gives me a lot of material for this show, so I really do love Michael Saylor deep down. There we go. Like the video if you can. Thanks, everyone. Any likes you can, we appreciate it. It pushes these videos out to everybody on the internets, and it's pretty dope. But yeah, comparatively, man, stocks, at least you can measure the value of the company, right? Measuring the value of a company is so bloody important. Like, I can't even begin to even overstate that. You got to be able to measure the value of a company. It matters. And or any sort of asset, you got to be able to measure its utility. What can it do? For example, I can figure out the usefulness for gold, right? There's no financial statements to read on gold, but I don't need to look at the market to know that it's sought after for its utility purposes. So that's a big deal, right? So because it's sought after for its utility purposes, that's the biggest thing. Um, and what can Bitcoin do in reality? Like, what is its defining factor? Now, if Bitcoin could be backed by gold, I actually might be into Bitcoin. But because it can't, because of its decentralization, that's a problem. There is no one entity that can actually put gold to Bitcoin that could cover it. So at the end of the day, Bitcoin is worthless because it's backed by nothing. The software itself is pretty impressive, but it's open source and can be duplicated. So you have Bitcoin 2.0, you've got Litecoin, you got Ethereum, whatever the hell's out there. You have copycats, right? And those copycats create competition for the OG. So at the end of the day, man, I know what we're seeing. Bitcoin will be one of the greatest bubbles in the history of bubbles. In fact, I think it's going to make the dot-com bubble. You know, it's going to make the dot-com bubble look like? It's going to make it look small. Because when Bitcoin's value vanishes overnight, it could be like 60%, 50%, you name it. That's going to be a huge, huge thing. And that can happen. It can happen in a weekend because Bitcoin has no measurable value. If the attention and the love of Bitcoin goes away, if the interest goes away, so does the value, because its value is based on mere perception. It's a big deal. It's a very big deal. But hopefully people realize that if they don't, they don't, you know? So you can only do what you can do. But yeah, only one vote, really. It's still kind of wild to me. I was expecting there to be more votes on the poll, but you know, you can only do what you can do. Well, we got 12 viewers on this one. I appreciate the viewership. To everybody taking a quick glance at this. But yeah, I mean, what do you diversify into? I mean, this is the Warren Buffett versus the Michael Saylor discussion, really. Um, do you invest in insanity, chaos, lack of value, or do you invest in production? Do you invest in productive assets? Do you invest in something where you can actually measure its true value? Yes, you do. At least figure out its utility. At least I can figure out the utility of gold, for example. I can figure out the utility of even a company. What does it do? How many people does it serve? Does it have cash flow? Right? Productive assets matter at the end of the day. What they produce matters. The cash flow they bring matters. Now, cash is not king. Cash flow is the king. And I think it's something that my generation doesn't realize. They think that just having cash to spend is all that really matters. But what matters is cash flow to be used towards more investments. I think my problem with my generation is this. We've become such a consumer-based society. It matters. It's a big deal. We shouldn't be. I'm going to eat some of these Ninja Turtle cupcakes. But no, we've become such a consumer-based society that it's, I think it's ruining. I think it's ruining us all. Here we go. As I eat a cupcake. That's really good. Hold on. Okay. But yeah, the biggest question really though remains like, what are we becoming as a society? I think to some degree that does matter. It does matter. Will we figure out the answer to that? I'm not sure. But what I do know is this. Give me one moment. All right. So, let's see what else we got here. I mean, we kind of covered all the basis for this. I mean, what is there really to cover else except for I don't want to give any filler. I mean, the alternative is commodities, and I think that the thing is a well-balanced portfolio is a heavily diversified portfolio across every single asset class. I think you should have exposure to every single bond out there through bond ETFs. I think you should have exposure to every single US stock or international stock through ETFs or individual companies. You take your pick. For international stocks, it's easier to take the ETF route, if I'm going to be honest. So keep that in mind. But yeah, when it comes to commodities, I mean, you can get ETFs straight up that the actual exchange traded fund itself, the fund itself holds the actual gold. So it's literally an exchange traded fund backed by real gold and a lot of regulations. Now, preferably, it'd be better to hold the gold yourself, if we're going to be honest. But if that's not an option for people, that's okay. Another option, too, is to own gold mining companies. Or companies that just own gold in general. Or sell gold or whatever they do. You know, companies that surround themselves in gold. Silver mining companies are another good one that I think people underestimate as well. So it's a win-win. A lot of win-wins, you know. Let's see what else we got here. I'm sweating up a storm right now. So I'm gonna show everybody my boobs. Well, nobody's really voting in the poll. That's kind of sad. I was really hoping for more votes in the poll. But anyway, I am going to let you guys go. I do have a couple errands I got to run. I'm still waiting for my dad and my brother to show up. But when that happens, who knows? They'll call me. They'll call me when you get in town. So they probably got things going on. And I figured while I was home, having to take a quick crap anyway, might as well do a quick little show and Get that out of the way. But I do want to thank you guys for taking the time to view this video. And honestly, I hope you guys have an incredible day. Later, everybody.